Thank you, Abraham. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining. So just to make sure that everybody here for the same session, we're going to be talking about shifting entrepreneurial mindset, effective practices and approaches that we've learned from the years that we've been working around awesome entrepreneurs around the globe. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Detroit Startup Week and all the people behind it to making it work. I know it's a lot of work. We appreciate it. So just so I could know what stage are you in, who's here. We won't have time for every single person, but it'll be nice in the chat if you want to just start running a chat. What stage is your business in? Are you an idea business? Are you in startups mode, meaning like a couple of years been around? Or are you existing in a growth mode? So if you don't mind, just in the chat, you tell me idea, startup, or existing or / growth mode. It'll be nice to just see who's in the room. And then it'll be nice to hear like one word that describes you today. I know it can change. It could change in a minute, it could change in an hour. I'm just curious about right now, this moment, one word that maybe describes you. You could add that to, idea / excited, idea / tired, whatever you would say. This will be, as stated, very interactive. So I'm going to ask you to do some of these things here and there throughout the day or throughout the hour that we're here together. So bear with me, and I appreciate your participation. So I see startups, I see some motivated, some excited, I see some growth mode. Great. So thanks all for joining. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to just do a welcome like I'm doing now, and then I'm going to give you a little bit about background about me and how I got here. And then I'm going to talk about for about a minute, and then I'm going to talk about the entrepreneur mindset, what we've learned about the mindset and what entrepreneurs do. And then we're going to talk about next steps that you could take to keep your entrepreneurial spirit moving. And then, of course, if you have any questions right now or during the session, please, you don't have to wait till the end. You could actually start typing your questions in the Q&A section or in the chat. And Abraham is going to be helping me, supporting, capturing some of these questions, and we'll exchange them in a minute as we see there will be some spots where I'll open it up and just take some of those questions as they come. So with that being said, just a little bit about where I work, international strategic management, work around these pillars, usually globalization, entrepreneurship, technology, community services, and education. I mentioned that just so you could know, this is the experience I'm going to be sharing is based on these pillars that I kind of like hang around, or people that are involved in these areas. This is how I learned what I know today, okay? I've been fortunate because I worked with over 1,000 organizations and maybe over 11,000 entrepreneurs personally throughout the work that we've done. Some of them locally here in Detroit, some in Michigan, some in the state, and some, of course, across, overseas. And some in Canada, of course, or Mexico. So the work that we've done have been reaching over 61 countries as of this year. As of last year, we were at 59, and we added 2 more new countries this year. So the only reason I say that, I'm not saying it in a bragging way. I hope that you understand I'm sharing this in a way that helps you understand the perspectives that I will be bringing in from the learnings that I learned from dealing with entrepreneurs from around the world. Here's some numbers just to give you some perspective. Over 8,000 youth entrepreneurs, over the slide says 59 countries. From the website, we're actually now at 61 countries. We've dealt with people from high schools, universities, some high official government officials, all youth, everything in between. And we've been fortunate to learn from them. I'm an immigrant in the US. I came during the first Gulf War, 1990. And I've been here since then. So I'm fortunate to be here, even through COVID-19, although it can be awkward sometimes because we're all virtual. It's still a blessing to be here. Just a nutshell, I started my first business in 1991, selling t-shirts to not-for-profit organizations, helping them raise funds. And from that, I learned how to bring perfumes and sell it. And I was able to grow that for about 7 offices, 5 states, and about 400 to 500 people working in those states. And then I joined this large corporation called Macy's. I was part of their executive team, helping them turn around some of their stressed stores and areas. And with time, I was able to turn around some of their stores. I got another opportunity to help another startup called Pure Beauty at the time buy stores that were mom and pop and convert them to a corporate office, and then I helped them convert, turn around one of the stores and then help them open 7 more stores in 2 different states. And in the early 2000s, I started driving limos and selling things online, and I learned some other things in between. And in 2003, the launch of International Strategic Management, and since then we've been working in a lot of other areas, as well as been fortunate to work with many other organizations in different capacities, whether it's advising or mentoring or volunteering or contracting. So in the chat, if you don't mind, I know I was getting calls and emails from people from all around the world saying, would like to see if they could make it. It'll be nice to see what country are you calling from, or what city, Detroit or Oak, whatever city you're calling from, or what country you're calling from. So if you don't mind, just in the chat, go ahead and just put it there, or you could put it in, either in the chat or in the Q&A section, doesn't matter. So I see Washington, D.C., Detroit, Denver. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll keep going, and then please just keep typing them in, and I'll try to keep scanning here and there as we continue to go. Kalamazoo, great. All right, so this is going to be a tough exercise because I need you to focus on this. I want you to stare at this light bulb for 25 seconds, and I'm going to put a timer, and it's very important that you stare at this light bulb for 25 seconds. Have any of you done this before? And if so, just say yes. If not, just say no. So if you've never done this before, just say yes. If you've not, just say no. And then if you don't mind, just stare at it for 25 seconds. I'm going to be quiet for 25 seconds as I put the timer on. Okay, so now that 25 seconds is over, I would like you to look at this white wall or white slide. Just look in the center of the white slide and tell me, what do you see? Type it in the chat. Type it in the chat. What do you see? You should be able to see something. If not, that means you did not focus with me. So I'm looking to see, what do you, light bulb. Wow, okay. White light bulb, okay. Light bulb, okay. Great. Heart, okay. I guess we can imagine whatever we want to imagine. You're supposed to see a light bulb, and that's exactly what I want you to see. Those who have not played, and the reason I'm saying that this is important, because it's really all about the mindset. Unfortunately, our vision, which is one of the weakest ways of us dealing with other things, is sometimes can be deceiving, and the mind is very powerful. So I want to bring that up because we're going to be talking about the mindset of an entrepreneur and what they do and what we've learned from observing them versus what they think or say that they do or not. So you already told me where you're calling from, so I'm going to move to the next slide. We will not be talking today about planning a business or business planning, neither one. We're not going to talk about how to structure a business plan, nor we're going to talk about planning for your business, even if it's on a piece of napkin. We're talking today about the mindset that you entrepreneurs we've seen do to keep things moving, the mind shift that they have to live to make things happen and to start or grow a business. We were able to do this since 1991, working with entrepreneurs, but really in the last 4 or 5 months, spent a lot of time studying 3,000 or 5,000 entrepreneurs we worked with to see what went through to make them survive such even COVID or other crises they've lived before. And every one of them is different, but we learned a few things. So what we learned is really the mindset is what drives everything else to move forward. The self, the business, and the moving forward comes really from the mindset. So with that being said, in the chat, since we're talking about entrepreneurs, what do you think an entrepreneur is? You could tell me whatever you believe or think it is. If in the chat, if you don't mind, just tell me, what do you think an entrepreneur is? Inventor. Okay, light bulb. Okay. Those who saw hearts, I see couple actually. I'm interested to learn how you did that. That could be maybe a side chat. Okay, a leader, problem solver, visionary. Okay, cool. Risk taker, great. So I see, I love the different variety that each one of you look at entrepreneur and what they are or they're not from your perspective. And that's really helpful because the conversation is going to go around this, topic. So an entrepreneur from my perspective and for many people that are in the, what I call the entrepreneurship education, I learned that they usually look at it from a mindset. Yes, what you described is some of the characteristics an entrepreneur might have. In many ways, it's really how they think or look at things. They see opportunities, they see problems that they want to solve, they see things that they could do with what they got. And that's really what we've learned from the ones who did really well. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't do well. The whole goal for you to learn about the mindset is to really help you understand what you could do as a skill to help you improve the probability of you shifting to the entrepreneurship mindset now, okay? So with that being said, the center of the mindset should be about the problem or the opportunity that you're solving for the customer, not you. So what I mean by that, it can't be all about you and what you can do. It's got to be about what the customers want and what they tell you they want or need and willing to pay for or in exchange services for. So the way it starts from what we learned is usually you'll identify an opportunity or a problem that you would like to solve. Then you move around to what do you have as far as resources that you could use to solve this problem. So someone wants to take pictures, someone's trying to, someone's having a wedding, they would like to have some photos. Okay, do I have a camera? I can take pictures for them. Can I make their pictures look good? That's kind of like what you're doing. Identifying a problem or an opportunity, looking at what you have, and then identifying what you're missing. Well, I have the camera, but I don't have a stand. Well, I have one camera, but I probably need a video camera. Or I have a video camera, but I need maybe a regular camera. Whatever you would think through, right? Then you want to think through what I call startup mode. And what I mean by startup mode is really a survival mode, meaning you don't really invest in too many things beyond what you can afford to keep or pay again. So yes, I would love to buy this fancy $1,000 camera, but if I don't have the money or have the resources to get it, I'm going to use first my initial camera, and then until I make enough money to buy the next camera. This is important to understand. This is a startup mode, not a scale-up mode, because once you get to a scale-up mode, that will shift. But we right now are talking about entrepreneurship mindset is survival mode to get things moving, okay? We'll talk about entrepreneurship later of how to grow with that. Then you got a pilot, meaning what a pilot is you got to test it. You got to give it, do it with a couple of customers here and there, get some feedback, exchange some ideas, see what works, see what didn't work, and modify it, adjust. Pricing maybe was wrong. Maybe you didn't need 2 cameras. Maybe you didn't need 2 cameras. Maybe a video was more than good enough because you could take screenshot. Maybe you need to buy a software. Maybe you don't need to buy a software. You just learned, you pilot it, you adjust it. And then you got to repeat. It can't just be done once. And you can't start scaling it till you kind of like figure it out. And, there's a saying, nail it, then scale it. And it comes from the idea that first figure out what needs to be done on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or monthly basis, and then try to scale. And in today's environment, with all the changes that's happening, you definitely want to be ready and open to having changes happen. So this is why I wrote under mindset, always changing. Meaning not the mindset is the same. It's just the environment that you're in is always changing. So you pilot something today and it works. Tomorrow, lockdown comes back or whatever happens, then you have to adjust and modify to keep things moving. So it's important to be relevant to what's happening around you with the mindset being open to the changes that can affect the way you're thinking or doing. All right, I'll move on to the next slide, but for those who, my attitude is never about this is the way to do it or the only way to do it. This is really just one way that we've learned. I would be interested to see in the chat if you agree with one thing more than the other. It's okay to disagree completely. It's okay to say this is nuts. It's okay to say this is awesome, whatever you want to say. And it will be important also to share with us, since many of you were saying that you're an entrepreneur yourself, whether you idea stage or existing or growing, it'll be interesting to hear from you. What can you kind of like, feel like this idea you buy into more than the other? So maybe it's one of these things that you buy in more than the other. I would be interested to hear that. So in the chat, just please go ahead and write, this is how I started, or this is not how I started, or this is how I think about it, or this is what I've actually done. Whatever you want to do, just share your thoughts with us on what we just so far discussed. All right. I don't see any discussions yet, so I'll wait for a minute till I see one. So in case you missed it, here we go. I was like, well, thank you. You're very kind. Sometimes too much celebration, customers negatively affect your sound. Very good. So someone's saying sometimes if you focus too much on the customer may be too negative, that can affect your mission or vision or your ability to keep going. That's possible. And this is why it's important to focus on, are you serving the right customer with what you're doing? Because maybe I invented a product that people who like to drive Honda, Accord to buy it, and I'm trying to sell it to people who are driving Rolls Royce. It's just not the same. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's just different experience. My needs are different. My wants are different. What I like to do or not like to do are different. So it's just, you have to make sure that you're somewhat, and this is where it comes to pilot, adjust, right? You try it for a minute, this is not working for this group of people. Can I get a different kind of group of people? Can I change what I got? Can I change how I do it? This is why you got always testing. And Steve Blank, many of you probably have heard of, always talk about startup is a organization that is searching of its business model. So you're trying to figure out what is it that you're trying to do or be when you become an established organization or a business that's going to be around for a while. So that's the mindset. It's always shifting, always changing, testing, modifying, and moving forward. Okay? So what we learned is these things can happen. Okay? These things can happen when you have the right frame, okay? And what I say by the right frame, if you are struggling to frame a problem or an idea, sometimes you're gonna have a struggle getting support for it. And this is what, I think Einstein said it once before, if you can't simply explain it, that means you don't understand it. So if it's so complex that it'll take you 2 to 5 minutes or 2 to 5 days to help me understand what you're trying to do, most likely you don't still understand what problem are you solving or what is the unique solution that you're offering. It should be simple, plain, and anyone could really understand it. I know that's hard to understand in the beginning because you're like, why can't they see what I see? It's just back to the photo. The reason I showed you that image, because a lot of times you might have seen something that only you can see it and no one else is able to see it. Well, for me to get everyone else on board with me, I got to simplify it in a way, okay, look at this one thing, stare at it, then look now, do you see it? And then I get you to buy in to see my vision that I want you to see or to follow the lead that I want you to go with. It's important to understand that. So you got to be able to frame your idea, okay? What is it that I'm wanting to do, to whom, and so forth, and so forth, and so on. You have to have some kind of industry targets or understanding, what's going on with the trends, with the industries. Are they going up? Are they going down? Are people buying each other? Are people, leaving the business? What is happening? This is it becomes really important, especially with COVID these days, because if you don't see what could possibly happen next, because we don't really know, right? It's changing. It'll change again in a month. It'll change again in a week. We don't really know. Then it's hard for you to understand where do you want to go. And this is why I go back to initially is leveraging what you have, not necessarily what you have, but actually what you have access to, because you could maybe get some information or talk to some people or be in the industry insider that's been around for a while. So you want to do that. So first step, frame the problem or the challenge, look at the industry and what's happening with it, and then start peeling the onion, start understanding and studying what happened the last crisis when this happened. We all know no one crisis is the same. We all know that. There are some things that you could learn from it based on trends that happened before and after, during and after. So what can you do? So yeah, I see that he posted that Google has done a good job in sharing some of, if you actually just Google trends right now or what people are buying, Google will tell you what is being bought or sold. Now be careful, because sometimes you'll confuse the opportunity of just raising the price, meaning the hand sanitizer should have been 99 cents, today is at $5. That's not, I don't call that entrepreneurship. That's something else, okay? Entrepreneurship is saying, you know what, there's a demand or a need or a problem that I would like to solve, and in exchange, I would like to see what would make sense for that value that I will bring into the market. It's not about raising the price. That's something completely different than what we're talking about here. So I just want to differentiate that. Look at patterns and see what happened before, what trends that it went through, and what changes happened, and see if you could project, talking to people in the industry or from your insights from another industry, what could potentially happen here. Then create some baby steps. What some of the entrepreneurs that we've worked with before told us the reason why they were able to launch is they didn't really try to figure it out all at once. They just figured out one step at a time, one day at a time, one thing at a time. If you try to do it all, this is why I said start up and not scale up. If you try to just from day one have 15 locations, I'm not going to say that's wrong at all. I think that's awesome. If you have the money, if you have the time, if you have the resources to do that, go for it. What I'm saying is if you don't have all the money that you could spare like that, nor all the time that you could spare like that, then take some baby steps, create some momentums, learn some things from it, and then move it forward. Make some mistakes. When you make a mistake and you're only talking to one customer, it's easy to solve that mistake. When you make a mistake and you have 100 customers, it's really painful to pay for that mistake, okay? So learn from these mistakes, adjust, think about the resources and what you have. A lot of times the terminology we learn from other entrepreneurs, it's not necessarily what you have, it's actually the resources that you have access to. And what I mean by that, I might not be able to get a lease to rent an office or rent a retail store, but I might know someone that has a building that maybe has a small space that is open, or the back of it is open, and they don't really care if I use it or not. Or they don't really care if I paid $100 or $1,000 because they just will want to help me because they know me, or they would like to support me, or they like my idea. Whatever the scenario is having access to resources, not having resources yourself. This is important as we go through this with the entrepreneurship mindset. And then of course, the keep going, because we all know when speed bumps show up, most times you will just give up. And if you don't give up, you just will keep going, you're going to see that your entrepreneurship journey continues to unfold. So that's really what I wanted to highlight here. And of course, the last thing is adapt for changes. Today, you can't be in your retail store, you have to be virtual, kind of like what Startup Week did. They could have easily said, oh, we can't do it in person. Forget it, we're canceling. They didn't do that. They said, you know what, we can't do it in person. What else can we do? Well, we could do it virtually. Cool. What do we need for the virtual? Start looking at the resources you have and so on. All right. So those are the 10 steps I would say how to get you started to be thinking like an entrepreneur and working like an entrepreneur with the foundations that we talked about from the slide before. So I feel like I've been talking for too much, so I'm going to ask you, share one or two ideas from you that you feel like it helped you to get started. What helped you to get started? For those who said, I'm in a startup, or those who are in business and so on, what helped you to get started? And I see some familiar names. Thank you so much for joining. I so appreciate you. I'll have to go back and see if I could read some of your notes. What helped you to get started? What did you do to get started? Passion helped. Okay, cool. I'll wait for a couple of more answers, maybe 2 or 3 more. Serving in the market or serving some potential customers, good. Research, okay. Some people had no choice, okay. That's great. If you have no choice, you have no choice. I understand that. I was living in, in people's homes when I had to launch my t-shirt business because I had to figure out how to pay rent and eat. So it was not a choice, it was a necessity per se. Work with a mentor in the industry, fantastic, cool. So I love what you're sharing because these are really great insights for others to learn from you. What we learn also from entrepreneurs that many entrepreneurs usually love to share with other people their journey. And it's not to say do it this way, it's just they know that one way that worked for them, so usually try to open doors for others to pursue their happiness or pursue their dreams through what they might know or not know. So that's fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, let's move on to the next idea. So entrepreneur strategy, we could talk about all kinds of things. What we're talking about here is really the strategy of an entrepreneur. And I want to highlight some things, and I would love to see your reactions to it. Action-driven versus talk-driven, or you can call it planning-driven. You could plan all you want, but you have to really take an action or take a step. If you don't take a step or you don't take an action, nothing happens. In entrepreneurship, and the reason why it works, because entrepreneurs usually make a step forward. They make that leap of faith and take it forward. So please help me if you with your Q&A is to say action-driven versus talk-driven. What action did you take to launch your business? I know some of you said research, passion help, but what was the first step that you did? Did you call a customer? Did you try to sell? What was the first step that you did? Attended a trade conference? Cool. Whatever you did, what was the first step? The second is, did you really talk much about it, or did you first do it and then talked about it? So did you first do it and then talked about it, or did you talk about it first and then did it? I'm interested to hear those who have opened a business and been in business. Did you talk about it much, or did you do it first and then figure it out as you opened it? I'll stop for a minute so I can see some answers. I see a Q&A also is coming. Register entity, okay, good. So someone just register the company. Job loss, okay. Ready, fire, aim, okay. Thanks for sharing. I did it first, very good. So I want to remind you of that because a lot of times those who are in business today are actually now created new habits that might deviate them from the original habits that they used to have, which is figure out something, try it, and then fix it versus talking about it. And the reason I say that because sometimes when you're in a small business and you're running it, you get stuck in that mode because you're now creating a new comfort zone for yourself that you were looking for. And now you're not action driven anymore. You're more talking about it first and then you do it. So you might want to remind yourself that if I want to be an entrepreneur strategy, I got to do something. Yes, I'll talk about it for a minute, but I got to do something and then figure it out. Number 2 in the entrepreneur strategy is leveraging resources versus having resources. I kind of touched on it earlier, but I'd love to hear what resources did you leverage that you did not have? I'm going to say that again. What resources did you leverage that you did not have? I gave you one example. I can't afford to pay rent. I have no access to a building. One of my mentors said, I have a building, you could use my space in the back room here, or I have this space that I'm not using, you could use it for a while till you figure it out. How many of you did something like that? You leverage the resources that you had. I saw earlier someone said, network. So help me understand, what resources did you leverage that you did not have yourself? I gave you an example of mine, which is the office. Someone gave me an office without me having to pay for rent for the office because I couldn't afford having my own office. Yes, I was in someone else's space, but it gave me the space where I could get to see some people to come and meet or talk to or have a discussion. So I'm curious to hear from you, what resources did you leverage that you did not have? What resources did you leverage that you didn't have? You could write that in the chat. Right in the chat. Networking, fabulous. Industry context, very good. Great. All right. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is embracing mistakes versus making it perfect. So I'm curious to hear from you. How many of you launched your product or service and it was not perfect? How many of you launched your product or service and it was not perfect? Well, let's ask it this way. How many of you think you launched your product or service and it was perfect? Okay, guilty. I love it. Thank you. Every time. Okay. I appreciate the honesty, because we could talk about hypothetical, but I didn't want to do that today. I wanted to be, let's just talk about exactly what it is. Very good. So the reason I say that, because sometimes now, because of the way things are, because you have a little bit more luxury of time, or at least you think you do, most of us are working more hours than we ever worked before, you think you got to make it perfect. Well, just remember, if it's perfect, it's most likely not needed. Nothing will ever be perfect. It's just always work in progress. So start embracing that yes, it's awesome product. I'm going to launch it the way it is, and I'm going to fix it as I go. It's not bad that I wouldn't buy it. It's actually great the way it is now, but I would like to make it better. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make it better, but don't hold on so long that no one will ever get to see it alive. I see a lot of times that happening, especially with what we call the technical entrepreneurs. Technical entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs that are technically savvy in their field, meaning I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I am a designer, I'm an engineer. They have a technical skill that they would like. I'm a carpenter. It doesn't have to be, one way or another. It's just you have a technical skill that you're really so good at it. So therefore, you want to cut the wood in a certain way. And if anyone else cut it in any other way, it's just not right and it's not perfect, and you're going to have to redo it. That's going to have to be sometimes let go of, because you have to allow the opportunity to be making mistake and then to correct it. So it's important to have that kind of strategy for entrepreneurship mindset, okay? Of course, ready to do it again versus not working, meaning you don't want to be with the attitude, well, it didn't work, so I'm not going to do it again. No, it didn't work this time. Let me figure out what went wrong. Was it me? Was it the product? Was it the price? Was it the customer? Was it the environment? Was it the timing? What went wrong? Can I fix it? If you don't take the time to understand it, most likely you're just going to keep searching. And what you don't want to do is spend your time just searching. Then you become a researcher. And there's nothing wrong with a researcher, but you probably need to belong to a university or a larger institution so you could afford to do that, okay? If you're starting your business and you're trying to think, how can I move myself to an entrepreneurship mindset, you want to be able to learn from it really fast, assess it, and then move on to the next action item that you could do. So if it didn't work the first time, you don't give up. You actually reflect and see what you could fix, and then you move forward with what you could prepare or adjust. And then, of course, filling a need is important, because at the end of the day, I kind of like had it in the first slide, you want to focus on your customer, filling their needs, not what you could offer. It's important to know what you can offer in reference to what the customers want or need. If I have a $10,000 camera and the customers doesn't really care for that, so it's not important for me to say, I have this fancy camera. They care less. They would like to know, what is it that it's going to do for them? Okay, and one thing many of you already know, the terminology, which we all listen to. We all listen to one radio station, and I'm curious to know how many of you know that one radio station, which radio station is. What's the name of the radio station that we all, every one of you here today, every one of you that you know someone, listen to? Do you know what that radio station is? I'm going to wait for the chat to see some names for it. WWJ. Well, is that someone who works there? I'm curious. No, there's actually one radio station that every single person you talk to only listen to. One radio station. No? I like the idea of WWJ, although that's not what where I'm going. It is close. It has a W in it. Weather, WDVD, WWW. Okay, well, it's WIFM. And WIFM is the radio station that every person listens to, intentionally or unintentionally, which means what's in it for me, okay? What's in it for me? So I just want to remember that, because when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, you really want to think about, it's not about what you're offering, it's about what the customers receive to get from what you're giving them, okay? I love that. So I'm glad that some people are laughing at it and think that you're finding it interesting. So what's in it for me is the only one radio station that you want to listen to, not to you, to your customers when you're selling or dealing with an offering or an opportunity that you're solving. What's in it for me? WIFM. So don't tell me what you offer. Tell me what I receive to get from you from that offer. That's it for entrepreneurship strategies. I'd like to see if, by the way, if you have any questions so far, we still have a couple of more things I want to talk about. Please feel free to start, sending them our way in the Q&A. I see some comments, but I don't see many questions yet. But if you have any questions, please feel free to start filling them in. So I would like to take this minute and spend next 2 minutes for you to write down 3 action steps that you could do today, excuse me, from what you learned, or what you, not necessarily I taught you anything, but what you inspired or heard or you reflected from this talk today. What would you do tomorrow? What would you do today after this call? Just 3 steps from an entrepreneurial perspective that will help you move your business forward. So if you're in idea stage, to move it forward to a startup stage. If you're in a startup stage, it helps you develop it further. If you're an existing company and you want to grow, help you grow it. So I want to take just 1 minute and give you time to write 3 steps, actually exactly 2 minutes, 3 steps that you would do to make it happen. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Take your time and write it down. I'm going to put a timer on for exactly 90 seconds since I started talking a few seconds ago. So 90 seconds, I'll start it right now. Timer starts. Yeah, and for those, I see a couple of you already writing it in. You're welcome to share 1 or 2 items of what you will do, whatever you feel comfortable sharing with us here. I love what you guys are sharing already. Rethinking, adapting, pilot test a program I've been working on. Fabulous. Complete profiles on various platforms. It's fabulous. Market business. Okay, good. Solicit to customers. Good. Yeah. Time is almost up. 10 seconds left. Just keep writing, please. I see, just keep writing those who can. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I hope that this drives you now that you wrote it here. And I think this is, I'm not sure if this is public or not, but Abraham could tell us that in a minute when he comes back. So now it's written down somewhere. I'm going to hold you accountable for it. When I see you next time, or if you could send me a note, we'll be able. I'm going to ask you those questions. If you could tell me that you were here and of course you took this and you made a commitment, I'm going to hold you accountable per se. So I'm asking you to do that because really at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is about action driven and then figuring it out as you go. No one has it figured out at all. Okay. Anyone tells you differently, they're giving you some misleading per se. So with that being said, there are a few more things I'd like to highlight for you. We have a webinar that's been going on since March, and it's basically a resilient entrepreneur program, similar to what you saw today. We just dig deeper in some of the pillars that we talked about today. And it's free, of course, for those who would like to join us. You could sign up for free at our website. You could just visit our website, myisminc.com, and sign up. We're also offering this will be our 4th cohort during COVID, Kaufman Fast Track business planning classes, and this one starts in July. We have been able in the past, because of many awesome people around us, be able to afford to give a scholarship for a selected number of people for a full scholarship to go through the class. And that's also available on our website as well. If you just visit MyISM Inc. under events, you'll see some of these events and others. I will take this moment now to stop and just see if there are any questions or if you have any thoughts on this. And all the classes are all on Zoom. We are 100% virtual. We've been virtual since March. We launched it online because of the COVID to support entrepreneurs. And our first one, we actually accepted a whole cohort at pro bono from our organizations just to support and give back to the community. That's been amazing for us, which are the entrepreneurs that we serve. All right, so I'll take questions and answers, and those who would like to scan my QR, they will have my contact information. I saw a couple of names that I know, but I see a lot of other names I have no clue. So welcome and thank you for being here. And I hope that it was fruitful for you. It'll be nice to hear one word now that we're here, one word that summarizes your feelings now. And then of course, we'll take questions and answers. And Abraham will help me get some of these questions. Are you going to read them, Ibrahim, or you want me to?
Yes, sure.
Thank you so much.
We already have some questions. Sharon Sexton's asking, will your classes be on Zoom?
Yes.
Awesome. Patricia Kelly asked, do you have any ideas on how to inexpensively test new products? Great question. Great question.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to work with a lot of entrepreneurs who tested things before they even launched the product. So one of the best books that might help you figure that out is a book called 4-Hour Workweek, and many of you here might have read it. It's by Tim Faris, not me. 4-Hour Workweek, and one of the things he talks about is create a quick little page to say that these are the product or service that you would like to sell, and see if there is any interest in it. Then develop it. So of course, you got to be careful because you don't want to promise something you can't deliver, because then that will be a problem. But you want to promise something that you could potentially deliver. So let's just say I can take photos for your wedding, or I could make you a cake or whatever it is. And maybe I don't have it, but I know someone who will tell me before they'll lend me their camera for a couple of hours or whatever. Or I know a place where they could make a cake for me and I could make a smaller profit margin on it. So maybe I will do that to see if there's interest. So launching a little quick one-pager website. And you could do this, by the way, on Google. You could create your own website for free. There are many other platforms out there that could help you do that. The best thing, of course, is always to talk to your customers or potential customers and tell them I would like to get your feedback as we're launching this. And you could tell some people, do you mind being my guinea pig? I'd like to give you something, and then I'd like to get your feedback. People love that. People love to give you feedback, and people love to support entrepreneurs launching new ideas or new businesses. So there's nothing wrong with that. So that would be my little insights from what I learned from others. Pick a small group of people to launch it with, pilot, or create a one-pager to get some information from people and send it to targeted groups of people that you feel can benefit from it. Remember, it's not about what you're offering, it's about what they will get out of it, and then get to see what's the demand for it. Okay? Good question. Other questions?
I do have a question for you, Faris.
Yeah.
What got you interested in this kind of work? Or why are you passionate about this?
Well, I mean, I was really, when I came to the US, I didn't really have much per se, right? And then having gone through some wars, and this was my first war in the Gulf, this was yet one more war that I lived through. It really, after I started my business and after I especially moved to Michigan, I realize many people are like me, meaning that they're disadvantaged just because they don't have access to the information that could help them move forward. And when I started reflecting about what did I do to get by or to get to where I'm at today, I started realizing it wasn't really Faris's school. It was really because Faris was surrounded by some really awesome people. And the awesome people helped him in so many ways. One opening a door for an office, another person saying, I'll help you get the t-shirts, another person giving them a logo. So it was really the community that you lived in that helped you get there. And what I learned, many, especially in the beginning when we first launched in 2003, the focus was really underserved communities, specifically immigrant, minority groups, women, people who really did not get the information that the general people might have information more about it. So I started really focusing on, can I give back some of what I know and make sure that I open the doors now that I have some doors that I have access to I didn't have access to before, to say, hear these people out, hear this idea out, or hear this person out. And really that's what happened. I helped launch few little programs specifically serving underserved communities. And I just found that it was very fulfilling and rewarding to see someone be able to walk in somewhere and had really no clue about how they could grow something, and to be able to grow it to a large corporations or a small or a medium or whatever, or even fail and then learn from it and then adapt and move forward. It just was very rewarding to me. And I just felt, people always talk about passion. Also, passion doesn't show up. Passion actually gets discovered. So this is why you got to start doing, and then you got to figure it out. And you might realize what you're doing now is not your passion, and you could change and modify. So that's how I got started. And then that was roughly 2001, 2002. And then since then, it's, was originally just really volunteering in many of the places just to see what I can do with the little I know. And then, one thing leads to another, to an opportunity, to another opportunity, and just keeps going. And then next, it's 2020. That's how it started. Thank you for the question. I skipped much about me because it's not really about me today. It's really about you guys and about what you could do with the entrepreneurship mindset that you could have. Okay, I see that, Abraham saying that he could see the chat. Okay, great. Thank you.
There is another question.
Yeah.
I have a product that needs distributing. How can I accomplish this?
So you have a product that needs distributing. So you're looking for distribution channels. You could resell, you could wholesale, you could sell to other people that could sell it. You could do all kinds of things. So if it's in the food space, there's lots of structure around it. And there are what's called, logistic companies that deal with that only. And you have to find those channels and you need to go through those channels. Doesn't mean that you have to do it only that way. Lotion, oils. Okay. So in the beauty industry, just because I was fortunate to work in it for 7 years, maybe 9 total, there's also a lot of structure and a lot of, mini shops that would love to carry local brands or, give an opportunity for local flavor. So you could do that by offering it to other shops to resell it and giving them an opportunity to make some profit. I think networking with other entrepreneurs that have other retail stores could be an opportunity. Maybe they have a clothing store that they would like to sell this as well. Beauty stores, things of that nature. Excuse me. So I would encourage you to network, and attend some of, the Startup Week, of course, has a lot of wonderful other speakers. There are 100 and some speakers speaking, and I would encourage you to connect with many of them, as well as, just seeing who else is doing the, the kind of workshops that you're looking for, or has a retail store that you could visit or talk to or call. There are all kinds of opportunities for that. All right. I see more questions.
Another great question.
Yeah.
If you have to budget to retain an outside professional to help you with your launch, what would you choose? An accountant, someone that's proficient in marketing, a lawyer, or a web designer, etc.?
I'm not sure if I can answer that. I have to understand a lot of things that I don't know, right? So on a high level, you need that team, period, right? You do need a lawyer, you do need an accountant, you do need all this stuff. My experience with working with entrepreneurs, many times they try first to launch it, and then they figure those things out, and then they deal with it as it comes. The one thing I will always say, just be careful not to break the law, because you don't want to be in jail. Okay, that's the one thing you don't want to do. And then if you do make a mistake, as long as you correct it, most of the times customers are happy as long as you are keep improving and don't promise them something that you can deliver. Okay. So if you ask me, if you have limited resources, which one should you do? I would say first start going to the customers to see if there's a demand for it. And if there is a demand, start figuring out, okay, how much can I be selling from this now to make it a business, or can it be just a hobby for now till I evolve and develop on it? That's something you could think through. And there's actually a good book that could help you think through that. That's called Profit First. Profit First. So it'll help you understand, as you make something, can you make some profit on it? So therefore you could continue to grow it or not. So for instance, if I'm going to make this lotion and I'm going to sell for 20 bucks, just for easy math for us, and it costs me 10 to make it, and they can't sell it more than 20 in the store, that means I could no longer sell it for 20. I got to sell it for maybe 12 or 13. So the store could make another $5 or $10 on it. And then I got to look at it and say, how many of these do I need to sell to make me a profit? And of course, there's something called break-even point. I didn't go through any of these things because to me, that's technical and you could find assistance with that. I'm talking about the mindset that drives you to make these things happen, okay? So with the break-even point, you get to figure out, okay, how many pieces at what price point it will break even for me so I could at least cover up my cost, including my salary or my pay or including my overhead costs or whatever way you want to look at it. And that could mean, okay, I got to make 250 of them. Cool. Well, how long does it take to do 250 of them? You might say, well, it takes me, if I'm going to do it myself, 2 full days. Then we have to ask, is that going to be worth it? Is that going to be enough? Can you really make this happen? So now if you tell me you could only make 500 of them for the week or maybe 600, whatever the number is. And even if you sold all of them, you're not going to get to the break-even point, or you will get to the break-even point, but you'll never have a life. Is that what you want to do? Or you start thinking, you know what? It's scalable, because if I could hire someone and pay him X dollars to make this, yes, it'll take him 2 days. But if I sold it in 50 stores, then the numbers will change. Or if I sold them in 10 stores, then the number will change. It's the strategy of doing, figuring it out, modifying it, adjusting it, and just keep doing with it. That's what I would say. Hopefully that answered the question.
Another great question is, what's the best way to market and price a service?
Well, that's a whole nother talk, but in general, I usually talk about 4 strategies for pricing, and there are lots more than the 4 that I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to mention these 4. The first strategy is what's called industrial or classical way. So you figure out how much it costs you. You figure out how much you want to make profit margins in it, and then you figure out the price point. So I'm going to make this cake. It costs me 20 bucks to make between my hours, my flours, my eggs, my oven, everything else. And then I would like to make 10 bucks for every cake because I want to make 100 bucks a day and I want to sell 10 cakes a day. Well, that's the profit margin is 50% or whatever that number is. That's the first way. So you figure out what's your cost, what's your overhead cost, what percent do you want to make a profit. It'll give you the answer for how much price can you put this on for. The second way is to look around and see what others are already charging for it or for something like it. So if I'm inventing something new that maybe it's a new invention, I have an IP on it, well, it doesn't mean that something else doesn't exist like it. Something else does exist like it around it. So what are they charging now to do that same service or similar service? That's one other way to do it. You can't look at one, you got to look at multiple. So I usually use the coffee example, coffee cup. You could buy a coffee cup for $1, 50 cents. You could buy coffee beans, and you could make it at home for a couple of pennies. You could go to a fancy coffee shop and pay $4 or $5. You can go to a fancy hotel and pay $15 or $20 or $30 for the same cup of coffee. It's understanding all those and then figure out where do you fit within the market that you feel your customers will be paying or willing to pay for. The third one is understanding what the customers are willing to pay. And the way you do that is really complex. But one of them is analyzing what your competition or direct or indirect competition can do, and then testing and piloting what would someone be willing to pay for it. But this is where it has to be, this is why I say it's some more complex, because you have to really understand the segment of the market that you're targeting. We don't have enough time to really talk about that today in a way, but the way you would want to do that is segment the market in different categories or different segmentations. And there are awesome people that could help you do that, create a what's called a persona, and then you test it on the persona, and then you figure out, okay, this will be the willing price of someone to pay. So the first one, cost, my overhead percent I want to make, profit percent, that means the new price. Second way, look at the market and what people are charging and come up with a price within the market, above or below or the same. That's up to you, but that's looking at the market. The third one is understanding what the customer is willing to pay for it by piloting and segmenting. And the fourth one is, if you do all these three ways, you add them up and you divide by 3. And that gives you another pricing model as well. Now, of course, there are many other ways. I just mentioned 4. Okay.
I don't see any more questions, but I do see some very positive responses. I know I'm biased, but this has been the best session I've watched so far.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you for this. This is what I needed to know. Thank you. Thanks for training. Yep.
Well, thank you so much, guys. It'll be wonderful to hear from you. Just one word to summarize you now. We're about 2:58, so we have 1 minute left. So just one word that describes you now. I know I asked you for the beginning, and now I'm asking you for the end. Just one word. Okay? Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you making the time. And I thank you for your participations and engagement as well.